Hey there, it's me again. If you can still recall, I briefly talked about the life of the only female emperor in Chinese history, Wu Zetian, in the last video. The details of her life's events are written history, which I would not spend too much time talking about here. Instead, in this video, I would like to discuss how contemporary media portrayed Wu Zetian and why it matters. Like I said in the previous video, Wu Zetian is an extremely complex person, and I don't think we can reach a universal agreement on her character apart from the fact that she's a badass motherfucker who can get shit done really fast. And inspired by her legacy, numerous actresses have taken on the role of portraying Wu Zetian on screen. Ever since the year 2000, we get 1 or 2 new TV series every year that features Wu Zetian either as the protagonist or as a major supporting character. Some actresses have even played Wu Zetian more than once in completely different TV series. In short, the TV industry has always been obsessed with Wu Zetian. But there was one problem. Is Wu Zetian a hero, an anti-hero, or a villain? Given the lazy-ass nature of the Chinese TV industry, there is not much space to play around with gray areas. In other words, very few people have the guts or patience to write complex characters, especially complex female characters, even when it comes to Wu Zetian, who is as complex as you want her to be. And that's why we get to see disturbing storylines attempting to whitewash her life. One of the best known stories about Wu Zetian said that she strangled her baby daughter by hand when no one was watching in order to accuse the then Empress Wang of murder. She then successfully replaced Wang and become the Empress, and Wang was tortured to a painful death. But in the 2003 TV series Empress Wu Meiniang, starring Taiwanese actress Eliza Jia, Wu Zetian's daughter was murdered by another woman, and Empress Wang was later killed by the emperor instead of, Wu Zetian. And concubine Xiao, another victim of Wu Zetian's unspeakable tortures, was casted as the villain. Similarly, in the 2011 TV series Beauty World starring Zhang Ting, not only did Wu Zetian not kill her own daughter, but Empress Wang was indeed the actual murderer, and concubine Xiao was again portrayed as the villain. In other words, Wu Zetian did not do what we all know she did, and those she tortured to death were the actual culprits, and they deserve their painful endings. If that's not outrageous whitewashing, I don't know what it is. Let's face it, people have very different views on Wu Zetian's life, but her cruelty was never controversial. Yes, misogynist historians may have painted her to be extra merciless and cold-blooded, but even in an era as liberal as the Tang Dynasty, there is no other way for a woman to be as successful as Wu Zetian without using torture. And really, Wu Zetian's age was the age of political terror. She employed people who specializes in interrogation and torture so she can kill any backlash against her in its infancy. Of knowing very clearly that there were many people who did not acknowledge her rulership and would not hesitate to overthrow her if she hesitated. It was her way and possibly the only way for her to stay in power for so many years. To blame her crimes on her victims so she can act as the Virgin Mary kind of protagonist is not only untruthful to historical facts, but also extremely, extremely misogynist. Because even if historians have slut-shamed Wu Zetian for many years over her personal life, portraying her as a warm-hearted, innocent girl is even more offensive. By doing that, you're telling me that a woman cannot be inherently decisive, ambitious, or merciless. You're telling me that even one of the cruelest women in Chinese history started out nice, and it was the malice of her enemies that changed her. I'm not saying that Wu Zetian was born to be this cruel, but really out of all women in Chinese history, you decided to whitewash the one woman who killed her own daughter, tortured her enemies to death, demoted 2 sons from the throne, and traumatized a whole generation of royal princes. Really? Her? And like I said in the previous video, Wu Zetian was very different from other power-hungry women in Chinese history. She did not stop where other women have stopped. She was the only one who was confident enough to take the throne for herself. And she was the only one who earned the recognition as the emperor. And to reach a place that high requires not only tremendous intelligence, but also unprecedented political wisdom. There is just no way for her to be the stereotypical good wife kind of person, nor is she a victim turned survivor. There is no trauma on her side that could have turned her into a bloodthirsty dominatrix. She has always been extremely self-driven, and she was led by her own ambitions. And to suggest otherwise, or even go as far as to frame the real victims as villains, shows how ignorant the writers are about her life and her character. To portray Wu Zetian as the positive hero, free from any crime, is in fact an insult to her true legacy. It undermines the real struggles and difficulties she went through to move to the top. You can't just be the only female emperor in Chinese history by being the nicest person in the room. And in reality, you hardly ever see her play the victim. Her journey to the throne was paved with dead bodies that she willfully placed there. These bad examples show the writer's inability to understand that a woman can be a natural politician who is both motivated and ruthless. By suggesting that her rise was a result of mean attacks from other people, you're ripping her agency. You're saying that her decision to rule China was not a decision of her own. But if you look at her, someone who knew what power tastes like, and someone who could have stayed in her place as the empress mother, a role which nobody would contest, would you really suggest that her crowning herself was not a decision of her own? Would you really say that she didn't want it for herself? She had no role model. She didn't even have a successful copycat in the 1300 years after her death. Who else could have possibly influenced her to do this if it weren't for her own ambition? That's why I always preferred series that portrayed Wu Zetian as an aged woman who has already become the emperor, such as Rebecca Chen from The Greatness of a Hero and Carol Wei in Women of the Tang Dynasty. In these examples, we actually get to see a multi-dimensional Wu Zetian as mother, emperor, grandmother, or even lover. It shows so much more complexity to her character, and their performance can actually convince you that this woman knew exactly what she was doing and she doesn't give a f what other people think of her. Only when she's in her late years can the writer stay true to history and really explore her personality. When she's a young woman, nah, why would a young woman be this complicated? Especially when this young woman is the protagonist. I mean, supporting characters who were also young women can be villains, no problem, but just not her. But let's get real. I mean, if you're really interested in her life, don't watch TV. Read history. Read multiple narratives. Read multiple versions. Read different perspectives of the same story. And read about the controversies. And based on what you've read, make up your own mind on what kind of person she really is. I'll see you next time.